Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. My name is Bruno. I am from Red Hat, and I'd like to introduce Camel K as a cloud-native integration framework. And we'll showcase a very nice demo, fully event-driven. So let's go ahead. Very quickly, the session will be first introducing the technology so that you understand certain building blocks that are necessary, and that will help you to then follow on the demo much better. So let's go and introduce Camel K. So what is Camel K? Camel K is actually a sub-project of the open source community project Apache Camel, well known as the Swiss knife of integration. And Camel K is a platform that directly runs integrations on Kubernetes with serverless-ready capabilities if you have a Knative deployed. It is architected around Kubernetes custom resources definitions and operators. If you're not familiar with that, I will try to explain that later. And so what has Camel to offer? Well, incredible rich connectivity because it has hundreds of connectors. Serverless integration, it has the characteristics of natively run in serverless mode. For that, you really need to have a very efficient runtime underneath. Camel K runs on Quarkus. That has a very low memory footprint and can scale up in milliseconds. Of course, you have all the native functionality from Camel, orchestration, and many others enterprise integration patterns. That's the feature of Camel framework. Seamless integration with the environment. So Knative, it can connect to Kafka, OpenShift, and or other binding services. And then has a lot of focus on developer joy, making it very easy for the developer to create integrations with Camel K. We'll see that on the demo, actually. So this is the mathematical formula, really, of Camel K. So it's the combination of Apache Camel as the integration framework, Quarkus, the Java runtime, super lightning fast, and the operator. For those unfamiliar about operators in Kubernetes, these are like robots that will do a lot of work for us. So containerize the logic, deploy it, and run it, and so on. So really relieves the developer from many of the hard job in the environment. And this is what it looks like for the developer. It's a really 3 steps to have something running. And we'll see this on the demo, actually. So the first step is really to define a resource file or a source code file. In this case, we see the example here is using the Camel language, which is quite intuitive. Basically, it's exposing an HTTP endpoint for a service called roll-die. And when a request comes in, it will pick a number from 1 to 6. And once the developer defines that, it just needs to run it with the client. And with this command, camel run roll-die, this is pushed to the environment, and the operator, so this sort of robot that will do everything for us, will pick up that resource, will containerize it, run it, deploy it, and run it for us, and then that will be consumable for everyone and to access the service. So these are the 3 steps really for the developer. Now, let me introduce Camlets, which is something that comes with Camel K. And these are this is an abstraction layer, sort of building blocks that will help us to even work in a very easy way with Camel K. Right, so Camlets comes from the combination of camel root snippets. So that's what gives the name to Camlets. Roots, camel roots are basically process definitions. So Camlets are Kubernetes resources that are hiding the logic underneath of Camel to do some integration action. So it's really encapsulating a bit of code. And we can consume these Camlets as one Camel instruction presented in a very simple interface. So here we have an example where, using again the Camel language, we see that we are using a Camlet called Chuck Norris, which is fetching from the internet a service where we can get jokes from Chuck Norris. And then we are just printing those on the log. And here, the output of this, when you run it with Camel K, is 1 joke every second. The great thing about Camlets is that Camel K gives you a whole catalog with many of these building blocks, so developers can go and pick what they need for the sort of data flow that they want to enable. And if they don't find what they need, the great thing about Camel always is that it makes it very easy to extend the framework, so you can create your own ones. And this is very good for organizations that sometimes they need to do custom manipulations for some particular data formats that they may have. So you can really create these building blocks and reuse them all across the teams in the organization. And another thing that is great is that Camlets not only are great for Camel developers here, that they use them, but also for users that have no experience in Camel and no understanding. So Camlets allow you to easily use them and enable integration flows without experience. Let's see how that is done. That is with Camlet bindings, another abstraction layer, another building block within Camel K. So what do they do? Well, as you can see here, you can bind together multiple Camlets, in this case, a source and a sink, to enable a data flow. And you don't need any Camel knowledge here. All you need to do is pick these Camlets, configure the parameters, and the operator will deploy this and run it for you. And in this case, as you can see, we can pick Camlets from various cloud services, or Twitter, for example. You get tweets, and those would get pushed to the sink. And again, here you can send them to whatever system you want, to Slack or to the Kafka platform. Here, another example, but in this case, we are binding the Camlet to a Kafka platform here in the core. And we see that this Kafka platform has many Kafka applications that are consuming events from the platform, or other Kafka clients that are pushing events to the platform. So we can really pick any of these sources and then ingress all these data flow into the platform. And in the same manner, if we could bind the sink and then consume events from the Kafka platform and push those to Salesforce or to Slack or to Telegram, whatever. This is how you define one of those Camlet bindings. So in this case, again, this is just a simple YAML file that you push to Kubernetes, so no code required. So you just define the type, the name, and then you pick a source. In this case, again, following on the previous example, we use the Chuck Norris Camlet, and then now we are binding to the Kafka platform, and this would be sending jokes to Kafka, basically. To summarize it all, we have Camel K, the cloud-native Camel integration framework. This is more for developers with the full control on all the features that it has. Then we have Camlets, reusable snippets that we can then use in our definitions in Camel K, or bind them together on Camlet bindings. Remember, these are no-code configurable flows anyone can define, and with these, well, you can define integration flows, right? And with all of that, then I think I've introduced all the concepts, and we can pass to the demo that is fully event-driven.
Let's look at the demo story. So this is all about cross-functional collaboration, and it's all driven by a strategy team that needs to take some company decisions, but requires or relies on the input of other teams in the organization. So, for example, the architecture team, the development, operations. And typically this strategy team, they get together on a video session, and they create a Sheets document that they share, they brainstorm, and they type in their questions and assign a team owner they suspect that can assist them into those topics. We'd like to apply some automation and collect the information that these teams can push as events, so in an event-driven fashion, and then we would push those into the Google Sheets so that it is available to the strategy team. There's some demo preparations for this. I've prepared a Kubernetes environment, of course the Camel K platform with its operator that is going to react to all the things that we do, containerize, run, deploy, all those things. A Kafka platform where we are going to produce and push events there and consume events. API access to Google Sheets because we want to fetch that information and push it into Kafka, mail server to simulate and interact as if we were the different teams, and then some API access to Google Drive because we want to upload some documents in there. This is the end-to-end flow. So there's 5 stages. So there's a lot packed into this demo. But then because of time, some of the bits we are not going to see them. So we will just show to you how to implement a Camelot binding and a normal Camel K implementation, and some other example. I'll walk you through those. So this is stage 1. So stage 1, we want to fetch the rows from the Google Sheets and push them to a topic called questions into the Kafka platform. Now this bit is easy. We can select from the catalog a Camelot and then do a Camelot binding and define it. So let's see how that is done. So if we jump to the environment, you see that stages 3 and 4 are already in place so that we can save some time. But then we are going to deploy stage 1 and we want to see how that is done. So we have the definition of stage 1. This is VS Code, so we can look at the definition, and this is what it looks like. So we see that this is a Camelot binding. Sorry, let me just go here. Okay, so this is a Camelot binding. The name is stage 1, and we have selected a Camelot called Google Sheet source, for which we just need to configure the parameters, so access tokens, the Google Sheets ID, and so on. And then we configure the sync. So we are binding these to the platforms, to the Kafka platform, and to the topic called questions. Right, so this is the YAML file, and all we want to do from the command line is to push this YAML file there. So we say scripts demo stage 1, and like I say, this just uploads the YAML definition into Kubernetes. So when we do that, we should see in the environment, there you go, stage 1 gets deployed. So that's the operator, so the robot that sees that we have pushed that definition and then deploys that as an integration unit. Right, so we are going to trust that that has already fetched the information from the Google Sheets and has pushed each row as a different event to the Kafka platform. So in that sense, we have completed stage 1, and now we can see, we can jump to stage 2, which is basically going to consume those events that were pushed. And here we want to do some routing logic because we want to send the events to the different teams, so the different questions to the different inboxes, using different email addresses to the different teams of the organizations. Right, so that's a bit less trivial, and we will use a Camel K definition for that using the Camel language. Let's have a look. Right, so we go to the Camel source and we close this file. We can look at the one that we have, and it is here. So that's the entire Camel definition using the Camel language, but I don't expect you to understand this. So instead, I'm going to delete all of this, and we are going to implement this visually so that you can follow what we are doing, and you see how rapidly we can implement Camel sources. So I'm using this visual editor. It is a prototype that I've been doing, and is going to be generating the Camel language for us. So the very first thing to do is to use a Kafka consumer. So there it is on the screen. And we just need to configure the topic we want to subscribe to. So that's questions. And at this stage, I just want to see that this works properly. So I just want to log the payload of those events coming from Kafka. And we use the variable body that represents the payload of that event. And you see on the left that we have generated some Camel language. And at that stage, I'm happy with this so far. I'm going to save this. And what I want is to deploy this on the environment and further develop and keep implementing if I feel happy that I'm doing things correctly. So let's do that. We go to the console, and I want to show you the command on how to run that. Stage 2. So this is the instruction. Let me copy and paste. It will be even easier for me. So this is the CLI command there that I paste. and we use the Camel client with K, and we say Camel run. We give it a name, stage 2. This is the file that we are pushing to the environment. So the file definition, this is it, the one we have generated visually. And we just use here a dependency for JSON manipulation, and we add the dev flag. The dev flag is to deploy this and run it in dev mode so that it hooks the console to the environment in Kubernetes, and the operator is going to be watching every time that we save. For each save, the client is going to push the new version and immediately gets rolled out. So let's press enter, and when I press enter, we see that that should be deployed by the operator there. We can see that he's running a new pod. That's stage 2, and if we look at the logs of that, we see that we get the logs from the container, and immediately we see 3 entries, so 3 logs for the 3 different rows on the Google Sheet document. So we see that first we get the identifier of the row ID. So in row number 5, we have these questions from strategy, and this is targeted for architecture, as you can see, right? The second log, we see that it is targeted for operations, and the third log, we see that is targeted for development. So I'm happy. So far, this is working. So I go back to my implementation, and then I just need to keep progressing with my implementation. So what I'm going to do next is just clean headers, because I'm going to get ready to send emails and I want them clean. Then the following thing I need to do is to use the data format to convert the JSON input into Java, because that's easier to manipulate with the Camel language. And now I want to use some routing logic. And for that, there's a pattern, the choice, and we use 3 conditions because we want to distinguish from the 3 different teams. And so there's a condition to configure here. And we see that here the pattern that is going to be routing the messages. And the condition to define there on screen, what I'm going to do is from the payload, I'm going to pick the bit of information. So that would be information, so the second token, so the last token, that refers to the team name. And if that matches development, it means that it needs to be sent to development. So I'm going to copy this expression, and I'm going to configure the other branches as well. So on the second branch, we want to send this to architecture. So if it comes if it's destined for architecture, we would use that on the second branch. And on the third branch, we would do the same for operations. All right. Okay, so we have the conditions defined, and now we can implement the different branches. And here what I want to do is just, because I know that this is meant for development, I can set a header for the email, which is the email address, right? So to, and I can say there that this is going to go to development at demo Camel K. That will be the email address. Okay, and I'm going to then delegate on a subroutine that is going to be in charge of sending that email. And for that, I need to create that subroutine. So I create a new route that for now is going to be empty. I'm just going to leave it there. And I go back to my definition here. And and then I can configure this, right? So I say route 2, so that's configured now. And I do the same thing for the second branch. So I want to set a header with the email address for the architecture team. So I copy the email address, but I change here and I say architecture. Okay, and same thing, I want to call the subroutine, the same subroutine that is already pre-configured there. And the same thing for the third branch. So I set the header, I set the 2, and then I can paste and say this is operations. So operations email address, operations, that's fine. And call the subroutine. All right, so that's already in place. This I'm going to just place there to organize a little bit better. And so far I've done quite some implementation. I don't want to keep going. I just want to print out the email address to see that everything goes according to plan. So I'm going to print out that is a header too. And and then save, roll out this new version, see that everything is going according to plan, and then keep going, right? So as soon as I save, I can look at my logs, and you see that is pushing this to the environment. The container is being replaced with a new version of it. The operator is doing that for us. And if we look at the printouts, let's look at the logs. And we do see actually actions there. So we see the 3 branches being executed, and we see that we have the 3 different email addresses. So architecture, operations here, and development. So all seems that is going well, right? So now I can complete, I'm happy, I can complete my implementation. All I need to do now is just, I have the target email address. Now I just need to specify who is sending this address, so from, and this is going to be the strategy team, because we are sending these emails on behalf of the strategy team. We need to prepare the subject of the email, so that's a very important field here to fill out, because it's going to contain the correlation ID so that we can respond in the right row ID. So we are going to include that information in here. So question ID, and we place from the original Kafka event, but we pick the bit of information where the row ID exists, and that's index 0. Right, so we have the subject in place, and lastly, we just need to set the body, so the body of the email, right? And that should include only the question sent by the strategy team. So here, what we can do is take the question that's from index 1. And then lastly, then send these to use the mail component using the SMTP protocol, and this is already pre-configured to connect to our mail server, and that is in place, right? So if we are happy with this, I can save this, then check my logs. Immediately the client is pushing this to the environment, and the operator is replacing very rapidly with the new version, and we should see with the printouts that those emails theoretically have been sent, right? So we are going to trust that, but we can go to our mail client, and there they come. So we got the 3 messages indeed, and so we are happy with that, and with that we have completed stage 2. So if we look here in the diagram, that has been completed. Stage 3 is already in place. We are not going to look at that because there's no time. Just for you to know that it is another Camlet binding, so no coding required, just configuring parameters. And finally, we push that to Kafka. And of course, on stage 4, we are consuming those events in an event-driven way, and we push them to Google Sheets. So there, what we need is just to correlate right, questions and answers. And we use the row ID to know exactly where in the Google Sheets document those need to be placed. All right, so at this stage, all we need to do now is just to pretend that we are those teams. So if we look at our spreadsheet, this is it. It is there. These are empty because no team has responded yet, but we can do that from our email client. And basically now we are changing our hats, and we pretend to be one of those teams. And for example, I am someone now from architecture, and I look at our inbox and I see a new question from the strategy team. And when I read that, it says, after our recent company's acquisition, how will we integrate their systems with ours? Right, so I can then reply as if I was someone from architecture and say, well, our plan is to use Camel K and adopt event-driven architectures, right? Right, so when I send this, it has a problem of connection to the email server, but that's because probably my tunnels are stopped. So I'm going to ensure that those are up and running. So that's one, that's there. All right, so my tunnel is now in place, and I can try again. And all right, now the email has been sent. it should be traversing our flows in Camel K, and effectively we see the Google Sheets now has been updated because that email has been pushed, and Camel K has picked up that from the email server and has pushed that into Kafka and then consumed on stage 4 and then pushed to the Google Sheets document. So I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to change my hat and pretend to be someone from development. Again, I look at the inbox and I see an email from strategy, and they are asking, are we still having problems hiring developers? Because as we know, skills is an issue, it's difficult to find good people. So, all right, but now they say, well, with Camel K, that is less of a problem. And that's because, as we know, Camel K includes these abstraction building blocks where there's no requirement to know the Camel K language. You can use Camlet bindings and pick from the catalog and match, and then the operator will deploy that and know exactly what to do. So you can enable data flows without having any Camel experience. So when we send this email, again, it's going to traverse our flows, and it should show up on our Google Sheets, and effectively we see that we have a response from the development team to the third question in there. And lastly, we are now changing our hat to be someone from operations, and same thing, they see that they have a new email from a strategy team, and they're asking, have we figured out how will we improve our long-running batch processes at nights, which are difficult and problematic. So now the operations team, they say, well, now we are using Kafka to implement to run event-driven flows, right? Event-driven architecture to run in real time, right? Flows, right? So obviously, running in real time, event-driven, they no longer need batch processing. And there you go. So we have the three answers, and we have a fully automated questions and answers to the strategy team. So that completes, our all going back and forth. But lastly, I wanted to showcase another fifth stage where we are going to replay the streams of questions and answers from both topics, and use a Camel K integration that is going to aggregate all of that information, produce a PDF report, and then upload these to Google Drive. So let's have a quick look to that. And the implementation, I will just show the highlights of it. Because again, we don't have much time, but then it should look like this. I'll show you the important bits. So this is the entire definition here. But basically, the most important bit is that we are aggregating, right? So this is an integration pattern where we get multiple events, right? So from the questions and answers, we are aggregating that into a single event, and then that allows us to combine all the questions and answers, and then produce a PDF document on this process definition there, and then upload this to Drive. So here we prepare some parameters, and this is what uploads the file into Google Drive with the parameters. So let's launch this into the environment. We can stop this one and then say, right, stage 5. And when I run stage 5, so scripts, demo, stage 5. Right, so this is pushing that integration definition into Kafka, into the Kubernetes environment. So that has been done. That is being deployed, and this is supposed to be the target folder of Google Drive where we are going to be uploading this PDF report. Remember, the Camel K operator gets the definition, deploys it in the container, then when it runs, it subscribes to both Kafka streams, it replays them, aggregates all that information, and then renders a PDF report, and there you go, it is up there already. It has pushed it into Google Drive. If we open it, then we see all these beautiful simple questions and answers, all this interaction that has been happening between strategy and the different teams, so operations, development, architecture, and this is, for example, the higher management wants to see all these good interaction between the different teams in the organization, and they feel happy about it. And well, this completes the demo today. This is the full flow, the event-driven architecture of the demo today. I hope you really enjoyed that, all of this. And well, thank you very much for being there, and enjoy the rest of the sessions of the summit. Thank you. Bye.